Well, good evening and welcome to the Bear's Den. That's what I'm calling my studio these days. And it's kind of those of you that know me and know about my crazy thing about bears. I like bears. I collect stuffed bears or bear like coffee mugs and anything that has bear about it. I like bear stuff. Anyhow, and there's a long story behind that, but we won't get into that backstory tonight. Just wanted to talk about something interesting now. I'm sure everyone's heard the old adage that can't is a four-letter word, C-A-N-T, right? Can't, and it is a four-letter word, obviously. Uh, but the big reason that we like to call it a four-letter word is because when you say I can't, you're limiting yourself because you're making the decision that you can't do something, right? And I know that whenever I was a kid, I was always told that you can't be a jazz fiddle player or a violinist. You can't make a living at it. You can't really be that. That's not something that actually exists. I've heard all kinds of garbage like that. And of course, me being the stubborn individual that that I was, and I guess still am, I had set my mind about proving everyone wrong that told me that you couldn't do that. And so over the years, I studied and worked really, really hard and learned a lot about music theory. And I was fortunate. I grew up in a town with some really good musicians around that I could learn from. The primary guy I learned a great deal from was a guy named Gus Smith, who is a local guitar legend and a teacher, and he gave me guitar lessons as a kid, and really taught me pretty much all the really good stuff I knew about music theory that I still use to this day. And he was very, very important in my musical growth. But anyhow, I digress. Let's get back to the topic at hand. So, what is it? Okay, so about the violin and the fiddle, why couldn't you play jazz on it? Because you can, right? You can play any form of music, any style of music on any instrument. A style is based up of the way that first thing, note selection, rhythmic components, if it's a swing thing or whatever it happens to be. There are rhythmic components to jazz and every other form of music. There are note selection components to all forms of music. Like with jazz, we tend to go for things with a lot more color, sharp 11s, flat 9s, that kind of thing. Stuff with extensions, things with altered dominance, that kind of thing. Stuff that has a lot more color. So it's like if you were a painter and you only had a black and white pencil, you can do some pretty amazing stuff with it, but the kaleidoscope of colors that are actually available to you as a painter, once you learn how to mix the primaries and make all the other different options, makes this incredible set of options for you to make colors that make your paintings come alive, right? Well, it's the same thing with music. So I love that fact about jazz, that it allows you to get so much further into uh, the different colors of the audible colors, because you can hear the colors. And of course, they always say that blues is a major component of jazz, and I would agree with that because there's a lot of bending of notes um, that go along in that. So it is definitely a major component. Swing is a major component of jazz, and my friend Mel Driver once told me, he says, trying to describe how to swing to a person who can't swing is basically the same thing as trying to describe colors to someone born blind. I think there's a lot of truth in that. Of course, Mel is an incredibly good musician, and he spent years and years playing with Dexter Gordon and then with Andy Williams for many, many years, and he's just an amazing player. But that was, I always quote him on that because I thought it was a really appropriate thing. So there is a certain natural ability that's kind of required for certain things. But you'll find that the components that make a really good jazz musician are also the same components that make a great country musician, a great rock musician, maybe even a great classical musician as well, because it's even classical music you're interpreting stylistically, the notes that are there. Now, you may not be able to change the notes because they're written on the page, right? But you can change how you interpret them, right? So there's a lot going on there. But anyhow, there is no rule saying that you can't play any form of music on any instrument. And I've heard it done. I've heard Toots Thielemans play incredible jazz on the harmonica. I heard Art Van Dam play incredible jazz on the accordion. And of course, everyone knows, guitar is kind of an accepted jazz instrument. Guys like Joe Pass and Wes Montgomery and Barney Kessel and Herb Ellis and many, many more that are great players there. And of course, piano and all the horns are basically considered to be accepted for jazz. Violin was kind of pulled into the jazz market back in the day in the 20s by Stefan Grappelli. He and Django Reinhardt doing the Hot Club of France stuff. That was pretty interesting. But the thing that I find that was kind of missing, uh, because you would hear like major tonality stuff that's really let's see how I would describe this. There was a certain set of notes, maybe you might say, that were considered to be, or a stylistic way of playing that was considered to be jazz violin. Okay, and that's all really cool, but nobody ever really got into the more modern stuff. And this is kind of a point of conjecture with some people because I think of John Coltrane as being modern jazz, only because John Coltrane, Charlie Parker, Cannonball Adderley, Miles Davis, these guys took it to a whole nother level, and I really don't think anybody's really gone any further in the development of it, at least not too much, than what those guys did. Maybe Michael Brecker, incredible player, uh, which was more of a modern guy, but Pat Metheny. But they're still building on the concepts of what was played before. But what I didn't hear and haven't really heard much of is violinists that play stuff like giant steps, for example. I mean, you just don't hear that. There is a Japanese woman that I heard recently, oh gosh, within the last year or so, who does play giant steps. She plays Spain by Chick Corea and plays it quite well, actually. So, I mean, it's the thing. But I'm going to play something now just for fun, because as a kid growing up, I used to like to watch a lot of television, like all kids do, right? I think these days they're more into watching their phones than they are watching television, but we didn't have phones. At least we didn't have cell phones. We had the old rotary dial phones back in the day. That's because I graduated with Fred Flintstone. We used to ride dinosaurs at recess. Yes, okay. So it's been a while. But anyhow, I used to love to watch the old Pink Panther cartoon. And you'll hear a lot of people play the melody, they know that first part. Now there is a second part, which is a. So like that. Now that's a good tune to use for a jumping off place. So you can do. Now, so it's E minor 7. That's a G minor major 7. It's got a major 7, F sharp in it, and it also has B flat. So it's kind of nice, and but those are the kind of things that you don't normally hear on violin. You don't hear those minor major 7s. You don't usually hear a lot of sharp 11s or minor 7 flat 5s. You will hear that a little bit, but believe it or not, though, it's in some of the Bach music. It's in some of the Prokofiev music. It's in a lot of those guys were using that stuff, but it kind of gets hidden in there. They were masters at hiding it to where I think they were kind of scared to throw too much of it in front of the people back in the day. So let's take some of those colors and twist this song out. So you can have a lot of fun with that guy. It's a fun tune to play. And again, you've got so many colors and so many options that are available to you because of the fact that don't think like a violinist. Because, I mean, Mozart's great, Yeah, it's great music. But you have to go ahead and say, hey, let's go a little further on the color spectrum here. We'll play some stuff that's, more outside the box and a little bit more modern harmonically. Of course, I keep saying modern harmonically. And again, Bach was doing it. I realized that the first time I was actually playing the Bach Violin Concerto in E, and there was this portion of it where it keeps going to the key of B. Now, it's written as 4 sharps, right? But there's an accidental A sharp that keeps sneaking in this one section a lot. So it's basically the key of B without it being recognized in the key signature. So, you can kind of do that without having to write in a new key signature. You can just sneak the A sharp in as often as you like. Just happens that it's kind of occurring about every time that there's an A, it's usually an A sharp. So therefore it's the key of B. But anyhow, if you take the linear passage that's going on and you take those notes that are like this and you turn them up into a stack like this, mentally looking at them. For example, we'll take something very simple. It's a G arpeggio. That's what a G chord is. So he was taking, if you look at the linear pattern, you'd see something like a sharp 11 or a flat 9 pattern. And if you were to take those notes and you would stack them back up where they were linear up and down, you looked at them in a measure, like take a measure and take the first 2 beats of the measure and stack the notes up like this, and the second 2 beats and stack them up like this. You would see block chords moving. It looked like something that Bill Evans might have done. So it's really, it's pretty interesting that he was thinking this way. And I saw that a lot also like in the Bach partitas too, because I mean, those are like an exercise piece for me. So I'm always playing the partitas almost every day as a way, it's for hand structure for me. Because I do like the way that Bach was such a thinker. And of course, obviously there's no recordings of him playing violin, but he had to be a great violinist because he had a really in-depth understanding of the instrument. Because if you look at the partitas, which are written for solo violin, they're so well thought out that everything there is very possible to be played. Nothing's unreasonable, but at the same time, sometimes it's pretty difficult. There's no doubt about that. But it's definitely well thought out to the point that you're going, okay, yeah, that makes sense though. And when he's moving through a progression, he doesn't just throw something in that you go, wait a minute, how in the world am I going to get my hand from here to there? If you stop and look at what he's got written, you can see that, okay, yeah, I can actually move a finger here, move my hand here, do this shift, that shift, and it kind of makes sense that you can progress towards that other position that you need to be in to accomplish the next measure or a couple of measures without having to, do some insane leap that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, he was always very, I think, cognizant of the instrument and all the idiosyncrasies of the instrument. So that's a good thing. It makes it a lot easier to play his music in the long run, and actually becomes structurally good for you. I say structure because the shape your hand is in, different shapes, whether you have 2 fingers like this or 3 like that. Sometimes you'll have this, these patterns. I'm doing this with the right hands, which is kind of weird. But anyhow, these are left-hand fingering patterns. Sometimes you'll just see them all separated too. Maybe it's all whole tones for a specific number of notes in a pattern. And those different patterns structurally, as you work through his pieces, you'll find that I think it builds habits. I call it structuring of the hand. It builds habits, causing you to play better in tune, to play, just to function better as a musician. So I'm digressing because I'm going off into Bach, and it's not what I meant to do. But talking about jazz violin again. So, but having that good hand structure that you get from the Bach is what allows you to play all the crazy passages that you might play in jazz. And again, remember this: like you take things like the Giant Steps. That tune is kind of it's one of those what they call a rite of passage. So you got to be able to play that tune. This to really there's a certain, I guess it's like jazz snobbery to a degree, kind of, sort of. But there are certain tunes that are considered to be accepted rites of passage to be a good jazz player. You got to be able to play those songs. And that's one of them. And it's fun to play. And I look at it as an exercise. Basically, you can see there's a lot of stuff going on with that tune. And again, that's one of the songs that, as a violinist, you just never hear anybody play it. You know, it doesn't. Oddly enough, and it's not. I mean, it's difficult, yes, but it's not that difficult. You know, it's not like playing the Prokofiev violin concerto or something of that difficult nature. So, again, so I think it's pretty interesting. There's been this kind of and I don't know exactly what words to use for this, but it's been kind of a almost like they put a cap on jazz for violin, right? So you're allowed to play Sweet Georgia Brown, and you're allowed to play Ain't Misbehavin', and you're allowed to play Nuage, and a lot of these tunes that are kind of accepted jazz violin pieces. But the thing that's like, it's almost taboo. It's taboo without being told that it's taboo, right? Nobody's ever come out and said, you know, well, violinists can't play this song, and, you know, this is against the rules. No, that's never happened that I'm aware of. But the thing that seems to exist is like almost like an unspoken rule or something, that they don't delve off into it. Now, I'm sure there are people out there that are doing it. People that they got to be just as crazy as I am, because, you know, I play that stuff every day. And I know there are other guys that are just as, you know, wild up wanting to get as far down the road with the instrument as, you know, as I am, and people that are a lot more talented than me too, you know. But I find that to be interesting, that there has always been in the business, you know, it's like a mental thing too, because you tell somebody, well, I'm a jazz violinist, and they go, oh, well, you probably play these songs. Well, yeah, I can play those songs, but that's not all I do, you know. There's a Bill Evans tune that's it's a really cool tune. I don't ever hear anybody play that, you know. Another one that's really cool like that is it's the bass line, and it's called Footprints. So anyhow, it's one of those tunes that was actually a Wayne Shorter tune, I believe. And Wayne wrote some incredible pieces. I always loved his playing. I loved his thought processes. Great saxophone player, just a great musician. But he wrote some things like that you never hear played on violin, right? So I guess at this point, what I'm kind of getting at, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to do this little video tonight, was to discuss the fact that I think it's kind of odd. I don't really have a reason that I can come up with that explains why it's an accepted norm for violinists to play, like I said, Sweet George Brown and Ain't Misbehavin' and Honeysuckle Rose and Satin Doll. Those were tunes, a lot of those were played by like guys like Stuff Smith, who was a famous jazz violinist, and Joe Venuti, another guy, and of course Stefan Grappelli. Those three guys were the the heavy hitters. Then you had guys like Jean-Luc Ponty. Now, Luc Ponty went further out. He did, but he kind of went off his own little direction. I never heard him play these like the Miles Davis tunes and the Coltrane tunes and the Wayne Shorter tunes. I'm not saying that he can't. He's a great player, so I'm sure he can, but I haven't seen him do that. So again, I think that's kind of another interesting thought. And as I thought about it, again, like I said, I can't come up with a reason as to why that cap has been put on this instrument for that music. And then, like I say, nobody's saying you can't do it. Although they told me when I was a kid, you can't play jazz on the fiddle. I'm like, yeah, watch me. But it is a funny thing, because as I look at this thing, there is a social thing, maybe. I mean, at least amongst musicians, where they've kind of put a cap on it. And I would like to know why that is. So I'm going to leave you with this. Why is that? There's our question. And if you have any opinions on that, please feel free to put that in the comments. I'd like to hear what you think about it. And you might think I'm full of bull. And that's okay. Wouldn't hurt my feelings if you did. But I mean, I would like to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. I'd like to, maybe you might name off some violinists that I'm unaware of, guys that are great players that play that stuff. But I think it's interesting. And so yeah, hit me up on that. Let me know what y'all think about it. I'd like to hear what you think in the comment section. Please like and subscribe. You hear that everybody on YouTube says like and subscribe. Well, they're all trying to get more viewers, and I understand. And I'm trying to get more viewers too, so I guess I'm right there with them. Please like and subscribe. Y'all have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.